Good morning. Today we will start our revision, our third revision for our third quiz. Now, question number 1. Find the degree of the monomial. If I give you x cubic y, and I want you now to find the degree of the monomial, you have to add the degree of each term. Remember that the degree of a constant is 0, and if we have y only, that means the degree here is 1, and if you have x cubic, that means the degree here is 3. So here now, it's like x cubic y raised to the power 1. And if you have here number 5 as an example. Now, the degree of the constant is 0. Here it's 3, and here it's 1. So the degree of the monomial it will be 4, which is 3 plus 1. Now, if you have also like 13x plus 7 plus 7x minus 24. Now, as I told you before, here now, if you have two binomials, you have to add, like how we did in grade 4 and grade 5. We put tens under tens, ones under ones, and hundreds under hundreds. Like 742 plus 312. You must add the ones with each other, the tens with each other, and the hundreds with each other. Here we have to do the same. You have to add the constant. We have to add the variables to the same power. If you have another variable with another power, you cannot add them like as x squared with x. You cannot add them to each other. It must have the number multiplied of these two monomials multiplied by the same variable raised to the same exponent. In this case, I can add. Either that, I cannot. So here now we have 13x plus 7. You can do it like this. Now, 13x plus 7x is 20x, and positive 7 minus 24, it is negative 17. So, the final answer is 20x minus 17. This is how can we add two binomials. Let's have another example. If we have 3x squared minus 2x plus 4, and I want you to add it or to subtract it from 3x plus 2. What do you have to do? The first step now, as I told you, we can add it horizontally or vertically. Let's now add it vertically. The first step, I will write it as 3x squared minus 2x plus 4. Then minus. Look here, we have 3x, so I have to put it under the variable x, which is here. And the constant 2, I will write it under the constant. Then look at the sign here. What is the sign? It's subtracted. What does it mean? I told you that the subtraction, it's like a magic. What does it? What a magic sign? What you have to do? Let's let's change the sign of 3x. It was positive, so I will make it. I will change it to negative. And for the positive 2, since it was and for the positive 2, since it was positive 2, the opposite of the sign, it will be negative.
Hi, teacher.
So here we have to change, since we have a negative sign, that means we have now to opposite the signs of the second term. And this one, after exchange the monomials, it will be plus now. Then here, it's nothing, so you can write it as 3x squared. Here, assume that you have a 0, hidden 0. Then negative 2 plus negative 3, it will be negative 5x. 4 minus 2, it's positive 2. So the final answer here is, is 3x squared minus 5x plus 2. This is now how can we simplify, or how can we add or subtract two polynomials. Now, if I give you this polynomial or this trinomial, and I asked you now to name the polynomial based on its degree and number of terms. So here now you have to name the polynomial. If you want to name it, as you remember the table before, you have to tell me if it is monomial, trinomial, and you don't forget monomial, that's I have like monocycle, one term only. Binomial, that's like bicycle. We have two terms. Trinomial, like tricycle, like triangle, we have three terms. And for also the number of terms, the degree of the term, look at the first, you have to reorder it or to write it with the standard form, starting from the highest degree to the lowest degree. Then after that, I will look at the highest grade. If the highest grade here is 2, I will say it's a quadratic. If it is a 3, I will say it's a cubic. It is a 4, I will say it is 4th degree. This is a way how can we name the polynomial. Now, based on its degree, what is the degree here? It is 2. So I will say it's a quadratic. Quadratic what? Number of terms. Look at the number of terms. How many terms here we have? 1, 2, and 3. I told you, like trinomial. So here, the terms of the name, if I want to name this polynomial, I will say it's a quadratic trinomial. Now, let's now go to how to multiply. Let's now talk about how can we multiply monomial with polynomial and two polynomials with each other. Let's start now. How can we multiply monomial like 7x times 7x squared minus 4x plus 5. Here now we have to simplify it. We have to multiply. Why? We have a monomial times 7x squared minus 4x plus 5. So what you have to do? The first step, as we said before, we have to multiply the 7x times 7x squared first. 7, and since now we have to multiply it, the first, as we did in chapter 7, you have to first multiply the coefficients, then multiply the variables. 7 times 7 is 49. Then x times x squared, don't forget you have to add the exponents. Here you have 1 and here you have 2, so it will be x cubic. If you multiplied two variables, even though they are not the same, you can multiply them and you will say and then you will add the exponents. But in addition, if they have different exponents, you cannot add them. You can only add if they are the same, or subtract too. So here you multiply the coefficients, which is 49, times x squared, which is x cubic. Then the second step, I will multiply now the 7x, but now with negative 4x. I will go now to the second term. 7x times negative 4x. It will be negative. Then I will multiply the coefficients, 7 times 4, which is 28. Then x times x, which is x squared. Then after I finish, I will now multiply 7x, but now with 5. So I will say now it is 7 times 5 plus, because here we have a plus sign, 35x. This is now how can we multiply monomial with polynomial. Now, what about how can we multiply two binomial with each other? What you have to do? So the first now here, how can we multiply monomial with polynomial? Now we will now learn, or we will revise, how can we multiply two binomials with each other. As an example, if you have 4x minus 5 times 3x minus 7. Here now, as you see, we have two polynomials. So since we have here now two polynomials, we can multiply them by three ways: by the distributive property, by the table, and by the file. Let's now do it by the table. Here now, as we said, we have 2 terms times 2 terms. That means I have to draw a table 2 by 2. Now let's draw a table here. And let's divide this table into 2 rows with 2 columns. Then after that, the first terms here, we have 4x. So let's now have this 4x let's put it here. And the second one, we have a negative 5. So let's put it here. So we move the we move now the two monomials, 4x and negative 5. And since you wrote it here in the left, you have to repeat it on the right. The same terms, left and right, because it's a rectangle. And for the rectangle, all of us know that two sides are congruent, have the same size. So if here's 4x, I'll repeat it in the another side with 4x. Now, let's go now to the second term. In the second term here, we have a 3x. Let's put it here. And we have a negative 7. Let's put it here. So now I distributed my binomials in the row and in the column. Then after that, since we wrote the 3x minus 7 up, I will repeat it down. This is how I use, or how can we use the table. Then after that, let's now multiply. Look at the first square here. In the first square, we have the length 4x and the width 4x. So let's now multiply them. I'm talking here, okay? 3x times 4x. As we said, we first multiply the coefficients, then the variable. So 3 times 4 is 12, then x squared. I multiplied the variables. The second step, I will go now to this square here. In this square, we have a 3x and negative 5. So I have to multiply them. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15x. Then here, negative 7 times 4x. Negative 7 times 4 is negative 28x. And the last one, negative 7 by negative 5, it's positive 35. Don't forget to write the signs between them. As we see here, it was 4x minus 5. We put 4x in a row and negative 5 in the second row. Then after that, let's now have these answers, gather them outside the table. So this is now the table here. Let's remove it. Now, take the first number, move it here, 12x squared, then minus 20x, then minus 15x, then plus 35. Then after that, now, let's now simplify it. 12x squared, then negative 28x minus 15x. Let's add them now. It is, I will add negative 28 to negative 15, which is negative 43. Negative 43x, then plus 35. This is now, or this will be now the final answer. Here, in this example, we multiplied two binomials with each other. We multiplied 4x minus 5 times 3x minus 7. These now, since you multiply them, you will get this trinomial. So multiplying two binomials with each other, you will get a trinomial. So by now we learned how can multiply monomial with polynomial, and we learned how can we multiply binomial with binomial. Now let's talk about how can we multiply binomial with a trinomial. So now let's have this example here. If you have 3x squared minus 2x plus 4, and you want to multiply them by 5x plus 1. Here now, as we remembered in grade 4 or grade 5, if you have to multiply 732 by 15, what we have to do? The first step, we multiply 5 times 2. We multiplied 5 times 2, then 5 times 3, then 5 times 7. Then after you finish, you will go down and you multiply 1 with the ones, 1 with the 60 tens, and 1 with the hundreds. Here now, we will do the same. The first step, we will write them as 3x squared minus 2x plus 4. This is up. And down, I will write it as 5x plus 1. This is now the first step. I arrange them. 3x squared minus 2x plus 4 up, and down I will write 5x plus 1. Now, as we said, we multiplied the first number, which is 1, with the ones. So now let's multiply 1 with 4 now. 1 times 4, I will say it is 4. 1 times 4 is 4. Then I will multiply 1 times negative 2x. 1 times negative 2x is negative 2x. By the way, you can also restart from here, like 1 times 3x squared. Wait. So 1 times 3x squared. This is the first step. And the answer is 1 times 3x squared is 3x squared. Then, after I finished with multiplying 1 with 3x squared, I have to multiply it now with negative 2x, where 1 times negative 2x, it's negative 2x. Then 1 times 4, which is plus 4. The second step now, we have to multiply the 5x now with them. 5x times 3x squared. What did we have now? We have to multiply them. And the answer is 5 times 3 is 15 x cubic. Look here, I wrote the highest number, the first one, the highest degree, 5x cubic. Then I'll multiply 5x now with negative 2x. 5x times negative 2x, it's 5 times negative 2, it's negative 10. X times x, it's x squared. Since now, before as we know that, I don't know where I have to put it. I say 5 times negative 2, it's negative 10. And x times x is x squared. Then so negative 10 x squared, I have to look at the first one here, the first row. In the first row here, we have 3x squared. So I have to put negative 10 x squared under it. Why? Because as I told you, how can we arrange tens under tens, hundreds under hundreds, and so on? That's here we have to do for the expressions too. Then after that, we have to multiply negative 2x, but 5x now with 4. 5x times 4 is what? It's 20x. 20x. Where I have to put it? I have to put it here. Then I finished. So I multiplied them now one by the first term with the first expression with the second one. Then after that, I have to add them as we learned before. 15x cubic. Then here we have the same expression, the same variables. Take one of them and then add the variables. 3 minus 10 is negative 7. Then here we have 1x. Then negative 2 plus 20. You have to add the coefficients. It's positive 18 plus 4. This is now will be the final answer if you multiply trinomial with binomial. This is all. Now, by now, we learn how can we multiply and we learn how can we add or subtract. Now, let's go now to talk about the factoring. As I told you before, multiplied, that's I give you I give you these two numbers as an example, these two factors, and you multiply them, and you will get this answer, negative 9x. 9x minus 15x is negative 6x plus 54. 45. Now, in the previous ones, we talked that if you have two factor, this is the factor number 1, and this is the factor number 2, and if you multiply them, you can write, or you get the trinomial one. Now, I will give you the trinomial, and I want you now to factorize it, to write it as in pair of factors. Like, if I give you now 4 times 3, you will tell me it's a 12. If you multiply 4 times 3, you will get the 12. And if you want to factorize the 12, you can say it's 4 times 3. This is the meaning of factoring the polynomial. Now, to factoring the polynomial here, we learned the first way by using the GCF. And there's another way that how can we use the formulas. We learned it before. Let's now start with, if you have like 12x squared minus 24x minus 6. By now, you don't know how can you factorize it by x squared, the two ways that we talked about them before. Here now, I just want you to write it as, how to factorize it, as take one monomial from them and write what the trinomial will be left. So the first way here, it's not to write, I mean that it could have trinomial like ax squared plus bx plus c. Now for this trinomial, you can factorize it by two ways. The first way, you can you find the GCF and you put a monomial outside, and then you will write the trinomial, which will be left. And you can write it also as the way that we discussed it in lesson 6 by writing or rewriting it into two factors. Let's now talk about the first one. So the trinomial, it can be factorizing by binomial times binomial or monomial times trinomial. Let's now talk about how can we rewrite the trinomial as monomial times trinomial. How can we factorize, or how can we write the factored form of this one here? Let's now have this example here.
I have a question.
Now, so if I want now to factor or to write the factored form of any trinomial, you can do it by two steps. Here you have this trinomial. This trinomial, it can be factored into two ways. The first way, you write monomial like this one times this way. You can write it as take a monomial, factor a monomial, then write the trinomial. Or you can write it like this as an example. These are the two ways how can we factoring the trinomial. Let's now talk about the first way. The first one here, like if you have 12x squared plus 24x minus 6. And I want you now to write the factored form of it as a monomial times trinomial. As I told you, if you want to write it as a monomial times trinomial, you have first to find GCF, the greatest common factor. How can we find the greatest common factor? Let's make a table here and we write the 12x squared and the 24x and the 6. Now, after we write the three terms, let's now factorize them. Look at the 12. I want now to write all the prime numbers that if I multiply them, I get 12. It's say 3 times 2 times 2. 3 times 4, which is 12, or 3 times 2 times 2 times x times x. This is now for the first one. For the second one, we have 24x. 24, it is x times 4. You can say it's 3 times 2 times 2 times 2 times x. And for the 6, it's 3 times 2. Then after that, I want to find now the common factor. How? I will find the common one here, which is 3. Only I have a 3. So this is the greatest common factor, 3. I will write it here. Then after that, I will go now to the first term, 12x squared. If you remove the 3, because you take it already as a common factor, what the variables will be left? 4, 2 times x times x. So which is 4x squared. The second step. Look at 24x. If you remove the 3, what will be left? 2 times 2 times 2 times x. So which is 8x. And then minus. If you remove the 3, because we already took it as a common factor, what will be left? You have a 2. So this is a way now. How can we write the factored form? By a monomial times trinomial. Now, let's talk about the second one. So this is how can we factorizing it using a monomial times trinomial. In the second one here, let's now know how can, if we have this factor here, or this factor, like x squared plus 7x, or sorry, minus 7x plus 10. Here now we have a trinomial. Yes, wait, please. Yes, sorry. Here also, thank you. Here also we have a 2 as a common factor. So we will say now, since we remove 3 and 2, we have only 2x squared and plus 4x. And since here we remove the 3 and 2, you have only number 1. So now you factorize it by 6 outside, 2x squared plus 4x minus 1. Now, then, here now, let's now factor the expression x squared minus 7x plus 10. In this one here now, as we say, as you see, sorry, we have a trinomial in a form of x squared plus bx plus c. In this one here, we have now to factorize it into two binomial ones. As I told you, the trinomial, it can be written as monomial times trinomial as we did before, or binomial times binomial. Let's now factorize this trinomial into two binomials. How? The first step, I will open two brackets. The second step, I will look at the variable here. What I have x here and x here. Then I will look at the sign of C. As I told you, if the sign of C is positive, that means we have same. Same what? Same sign of B. And if C is negative, we have a different sign of B. Or different sign, I mean. Here, since now the C is positive and the B is negative, I told you that if we have a positive, that means we have same sign. What is the sign of B? It's negative. So I put here negative and negative. If the B is positive, I will put positive, positive. And if the C here is negative, that means we have a different sign. Different sign, that means